Hello everyone, this is going to be a quick video showing how to assemble your lower ODM gear. I have these four parts laid out, and this is what we're going to use to assemble the main propulsor area. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to snap fit this part here. I'm going to line it up with this line that I have, where we're going to place this square block here. This just slides into place. We have a rail that runs along the bottom here, and I'm just going to slide it into place like so. I have a pretty good snap fit for these parts, but depending on your tolerances, it might be a bit loose. So what I'm going to advise is that you just add a little bit of hot glue or super glue, up to you, just so that you make sure that these parts don't move around while you're at a con. So I'm going to do that right now. Just going to use some basic super glue. I'm using Bob Industries Instacure. What I'm going to do is add a bit onto this face, which makes contact with this propulsor assembly. Right, that should be set in just a minute here. And I'll also add some along the rim of this main body. Make sure it's straight, so I probably won't be able to move it afterwards. Press it into place, and that looks pretty good to me. I'll add some accelerator just to keep it in place for now, or you could just wait 5 minutes or so for it to fully cure. So moving along, now we're going to attach the top piece to the main body. To do so, you're going to notice that there's some nubs here on the side, and we're going to line these up with the channel that is in the front and the back. Just going to press it into place and then rotate it, and now it's locked in place. It should be a pretty good connection, but you can always add a bit of super glue just to secure it. Alright, perfect. So now this is done, and we're going to move on to assembling the reels. Alright, so now we'll get started putting together the reels. First thing you got to do is add your bungee cord to this middle reel piece. In order to secure the bungee cord, what I do is I just tie a knot to the end of the bungee cord, the part that's going to stay on the inside, and when you pull it, you can see that this stays nicely in place. You can probably then trim off the excess if you don't want to see that, but it's going to be on the inside, so it should be alright. So I'll take my bottom piece, and I want to line it up with the area here that doesn't have holes for the pins. Alright, now that I have these two parts lined up, I'm going to set it off to the side, and if you need to add any glue, I'd suggest you do it now. And now we'll add the pins to the top of the reel. Just have to slide them into place. Should be pretty straightforward. And now that I have all the pins in place, I'm going to attach the top of the reel to the bottom assembly. I'll line up all the holes for the pins, and by doing so, you'll notice that we have this hook for the side brace lining up with the string. Push everything in place. Alright, this is looking good. Okay, so with the reels now assembled, we're going to attach them to the main body of the propulsor. I'll sort out which reel goes on each side by placing them on the table like so. And then I'll take a look at this extruded area down here. I want this to be facing forward, so I'll attach this one first, just to demonstrate. I'll place my main body down here, and then I'll just line up the tabs like that. And to secure it, I'll flip it around to add the zip ties. So at the bottom here, you can see that there's 2 holes for the zip tie to loop through. And then there's an area for this platform. This platform makes it more comfortable when the ODM gear is sitting on your lower back. Now I'm going to pass a zip tie through either of these holes, and you're just going to keep pushing it through until the zip tie comes around the other side. So you can see here that the zip tie looped around, and now I'm just going to secure it. Alright, and now you repeat the same step for the other side and attach the other reel. With both reels now attached with zip ties at the bottom, I'm now going to add the flexible bracket that goes on the reel. So I'll take my flexible bracket and I'm going to line it up with the holes on both the reel and the flexible bracket. I'm just going to push it into place here. I'm going to change the camera angle. Now I'm going to pass a pin through the flexible bracket and the reel. I'm placing the flexible bracket on the first channel here because I'm going to pass my string in through this second channel. Okay, now that I've pushed the pin in, we have the flexible bracket, and it's hinged on by this pin. Now finally, I'll take my string out, just put it away so it's easier to see, and I'll pass my string underneath the pin, and then I'll snake it around my flexible bracket. With the string now snaked around my flexible bracket, and my grapple shooter in place, I'm now going to attach both of these together with a zip tie. So I'll just line up the grapple shooter and the flexible brace in place, and I'm going to pass a zip tie through the top of the silver piece here. Zip tie goes in through the top, thread it through this hole here, secure it in place, and this part is now secure. Now we'll assemble 2 of these swiveling arm pieces, and here's what you'll need. You'll simply just pass the rod through the hole here, and you have this part that can be adjusted depending on how you want this to sit on your lower back. It's a tight tolerance, and plastic grinding on plastic sounds really bad, so what I did was just add a drop or 2 of just all-purpose oil. I added it here, and that does a good job at making this a lot quieter and better performing. So finally, to secure this in place, I'm going to pass a zip tie in this cutout down here. I'll wrap it around and line it up with this recess in the rod, and I'll secure the zip tie till it's tight, and that'll keep it from falling back down. With both of these assembled, I'll add them to the main body now, and to find out which side goes where, you can just take a look at the cutouts. You want them to be laid out like this, with the nylon webbing cutouts farther apart from each other, as opposed to doing this. You'll see why you want it to be like this in a bit. But for now, I'll pass this through the hole. I'll push it in through the bottom, like that. And to keep it from falling out, I'll add these kind of washer slash anchor pieces. And just push it into place. And then I'll do the same for the other side. Okay, with those two swiveling arms now connected, we have the lower ODM gear all set up. Here's what it should look like. We have the reels attached now. We have the side grapple shooters attached to the flexible brace with the string coming out the top, along with these arms that can move around and adjust according to how you want it to fit. Now we'll move on to assembling the blade boxes. Moving on to the blade boxes now. Thankfully, it's a lot more simple than the propulsor part of the lower ODM gear. We're going to take the top part of the blade boxes, which is this one, and it's also coincidentally the smallest piece. We're going to add our anchor parts for the blades. Okay, to assemble the top of the blade box, we'll take this piece and slide it into the channels inside of the blade box here. This part will determine the path for our blades in order to lock them in place correctly. So depending on your configuration, you might want to have 3 blades, or you might just want to have 1. For my demonstration, I'll only be using 1 blade to make things simpler. And to secure this, I'll push this rod through the anchor component until it's secured. Like that. And you can see that this part can move around freely inside of the blade box. Now we'll take my middle piece, and you can tell it's the middle section of the blade box because it doesn't have a curved end on this side. I'll simply slide both pieces in place, like that. And then I'll cover this access panel with this door. In case you want to add more blades later on, you can open this back up and add more components. And finally, I'll slide in the last part of the blade box, which is the bottom. Okay, now we have the main body of the blade box assembled, and we'll add the details now. I'll start off by sliding the bottom bracket in place. Then I'll add in the middle piece. For this middle part, you want this non-threaded section to be facing inside, and that's because we're going to add this cylinder piece here, and that one doesn't have a thread. And then finally, I'll add the top bracket. You can then screw in the bottom cylinder. You want to line up this hole facing inward so that you can add some tubing later on. Last but not least, I'll just put the cap on, and we're done with the blade box. I believe this cylinder is big enough to fit posters while you're at a con. I haven't tried it out yet, but if it does fit a poster, let me know in the comments. But in any case, here's what the back part should look like now that it's fully assembled. And here is what the front should look like. You also want to make sure that the belt component can attach and detach from the blade boxes effortlessly. If the clearance is too tight, I would recommend sanding it down a bit, since this makes taking off the blade box really easy while you're at a con, since they tend to get heavy after lugging them around all day. Okay, so moving on to attaching the lower ODM gear to the harness, you will first need to set up your upper ODM gear harness. So watch video number 1 if you want to figure out how to set up the whole top part. I've removed the top ODM gear here just to make things more simple, and my mannequin will be undressed just so you can more easily see the straps and understand how everything goes together. So the way we'll attach the lower ODM gear is by using these 2 points back here. They come off from the hexagon piece, pointing diagonally towards the back here. I'll attach a tri-glide after I put on the lower ODM gear just to hold it up. And you'll see what I mean right now when I bring the lower ODM gear. Okay. So I'm going to bring in my propulsor, and I'm going to slide my nylon webbing through these swiveling arm mounts. I'll just pass it through, and I'll flip it over right now so you can see. I'm going to thread it through the arm mount. Now I'll just completely push it up to where I think would be comfortable for me, but this is kind of optional. You can choose to have lower or higher. It's just up to preference, really. And once I have that set, I'll pass my tri-glide in under the propulsor, and this is what's mostly going to be holding the ODM gear up. Alright, got this side done, and I'll repeat the same steps for this side. I've adjusted my tri-glides now to hold up the lower ODM gear, and I'm going to flip it over just so you can get a better look. So we have this nylon piece that runs from this hexagon splitter, and it also goes through the arm, and then the tri-glide holds it up. You gotta push it up all the way, and then it kind of just locks in place. So it holds it pretty steady. Next up, we're going to loop the excess around the belt like this, the same way we did it in the last video. And then we're also going to attach the side brace and the grapple shooters. It's also a great time to add these anchor points for the blade boxes. So to better demonstrate how the belt's gonna go, I'll remove my mannequin arm just so it's easier to see. So step 1 would be attaching the side grapple shooter, since this is placed on the outside in front of the blade boxes. So I'll just slide the belt through. So we're gonna want this to be here. Step 2 would be adding the blade box anchor point, which is this, and you want to make sure that this face is on the outside. So I'll demonstrate that. You're going to slide it in this orientation, as opposed to this. So I'll slide it in all the way, and the reason we do it like this is so that the peg that connects here can reach. Alright, now I'll flip the mannequin around, and I'm going to mirror exactly what I did here on the other side. Okay, and I flipped my mannequin over. We still have these attached over here on the other side, and now we're going to add the other blade box anchor point like this, again with the face pointing outwards, and then we'll put the other grapple shooter. Once you have that done, you can then secure the belt. And just to show why we want it in that configuration, it's because you want this circle peg to slide into the anchor point, and that'll be your way of attaching the blade boxes. Like that. But before we attach the blade boxes, we're going to finish securing the lower ODM gear. So let's do that first. So in order to finish securing the belt and the lower ODM gear, I'm just going to tie up all the loose ends. So this point here, I'll just loop around the belt and secure it with a tri-glide. This is going to help counterweight the blade boxes, so it's important you do this step. And then I'm going to turn my mannequin around, and I'm going to do exactly the same for the excess that we have on the back here. So I'm going to loop this around the belt as well as this one over here. Okay, so I've tied up all the loose ends on my ODM gear, and now it's time to attach the blade boxes. But before that, I suggest you put on the leg harness part, and I'm going to show you how I went about making mine. So here's my leg part of the harness. If you want to see how I assembled it, you can refer to the diagram that we've made. I'll put it up on the Google Drive folder. And just as a suggestion, I would recommend adding buckles to every end for ease of taking it on and off. With the leg part of the harness now attached, we are going to join both our leg harness and our blade box together with a piece of nylon webbing. And I'll show you what we're going to do. So here I just have a scrap piece of nylon webbing, and I'm going to make this loop go around this belt right here, and at the back of the blade box we have a cutout here for the nylon webbing to go through. We're going to attach this to the belt right there, and then the other part will loop around the topmost part of our leg harness. And this is going to keep everything snug together while you're walking around and prevent this from flailing around as you're moving. So I'll attach that now. First, I'll loop this around the belt. Okay, so I have this loop secured. Now I'll pass this through the cutout I was talking about earlier. And I'll place this on the anchor. And just to wrap things up, I'll use a tri-glide and make my last loop on this part of the leg harness. Okay, so there we go. Here's a side angle, so you may see it a bit clearer now. We have the loop that goes around the belt. It goes through our cutout, and then it finally loops around the top part of our leg harness. This also prevents your leg harness from slipping down. If you secure this very tightly, it'll only give it so much slack, so it can't fall down. And if you want some extra security, I have some additional cutouts down here. You would pass the nylon webbing around your knee, so this part, through the cutouts, and it will make it very snug on your leg if you don't want it to move at all. Okay, now to add the finishing touches to the ODM gear. In order to holster your blades, you're going to want to line up this channel here on your blades with the bottom rail here on the blade boxes. So what you'll do is you'll slide it into the anchor point, like so, and then you'll slide it down into the channel like that. Okay, and then when you need your blade, you just pull it all the way up, and it'll be ready for when you need to holster it again. Now I'll add the tubing to the back of the ODM gear. You just pass it in through the hole there. You can add a tad bit of glue if you want to secure it there permanently. And then you pass the tubing in through the hole at the bottom of the cylinder here. It's a snug fit, but like I said, you can add a bit of glue if you feel like it'll come loose. You repeat the same steps for the other side. And then finally, we will add the bungee cord from our grapple shooter to the bottom of our sword. So I'll take the pommel of my sword and I'll pass the bungee cord through here. Right, so at the other end, I'll just tie a knot to secure it. There we go. Cut off a bit of the excess. And then you can glue the pommel to the bottom of the sword.